This is the 121st Psalm, a song of ascents. I lift up my eyes towards the mountains. Whence shall help come to me? My help is from the Lord who made heaven and earth. May he not suffer your foot to slip. May he slumber not who guards you. Indeed, he neither slumbers nor sleeps, the guardian of Israel. The Lord is your guardian, the Lord is your shade. He is beside you at your right hand. The sun shall not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you from all evil. He will guard your life. The Lord will guard your coming and your going, both now and forever.
Hey, yours was too short.
Yours is nice.
I know. And Sherry, you know that your job,
My job?
yes, we discussed your job. Should I not be able to fulfill my duties as eulogy reader?
Is she like the vice president?
Yes, you
You
will.
will. Sherry is the organizer. She makes everything happen. That's her
I
job.
only had 2 turnarounds getting here, so.
Well, that's pretty good though.
It was good. It was
It's
great.
a little turn. All right, I'm gonna give it a shot.
You can.
Okay. Thank you for joining us here today to remember and honor our brother Gary. Some of you knew him, some of you knew him well, and some of you knew him through my sister or my eyes. To sum up in a few minutes who my brother was, what he meant to me and my sister, and how we remember him for a lifetime is inconceivable. Come on, say it with me. I do not think you know. No, I do not think that word means what you think it means. Come on, Princess Bride people.
Yes.
Jump in. Name that word. Inconceivable. Words really seem inadequate. Only the pictures in my head, the sound of a laugh, or the familiar nod of his head instantly remind me, in a flash, who he was. Best words I can think to describe the qualities of my brother are brilliant, good-natured, and introspective. While he would insist he was a misanthrope, I did, and still do, heartily disagree. That was right after I ran to the dictionary to look up just what the heck a misanthrope was. On most things, my brother and I agreed. However, on this topic, we finally agreed to disagree. I can't see with my glasses on. That's a first. One thing everyone that knew him could agree was that Gary loved to drive. Anything and everything on wheels was always a source of attraction for Gary. If he could ride it, roll on it, drive it, he was in. I only remember Gary's first driving experience from stories told to me. He was all of about 5 years old. We were all loaded in the car, and Dad ran back into the house to get something. And Gary decided to play driver, turning the steering wheel or something, when all of a sudden the car began careening backwards down our steep driveway. My mom, in sheer panic, desperately was trying to do something from the passenger seat. My sister and I were squealing and hollering from the back seat. We somehow came to rest at the bottom of the hill. His next set of wheels were a little bit smaller. We spent many Saturdays at the roller rink off of 48th Street. While I was busy trying to look cool and practice skating backwards, Gary and his buddies Tim and Denny were busy screeching around the rink fast as possible playing skate tag. And soon, as I looked for him on the rink, he would be, as usual, sitting on the sidelines, having been busted for speeding and forced to sit out for the required 20 minutes. We also spent summers racing our bikes down the bike trail above the railroad tracks near Riley, our grade school. Yes, safely above the train tracks, no helmet, no knee pads, no rails. It was survival of the fittest. When Gary was about 12, like many normal boys, his first job was a paper route. I remember we were all so surprised and impressed that he got up faithfully very early every weekend to deliver the papers. That was until he wrecked the car into Mrs. Florky's mailbox. It seems the young genius had taken the dad's car key one Saturday down to the hardware store and made a spare key. He would then quietly roll the car in neutral to the bottom of the hill and then start the car and cruise around delivering papers. When Gary turned 16, he got the very car he had used to deliver the papers years ago. The stunning turquoise and white 1964 Ford Galaxy 500. Even though the car had automatic transmission, Gary insisted that the proper way to drive it was to shift the gears from drive to first to drive to second gear to low gear. His first real job of legal driving age was for a company called Canteen. The company stocked and restocked vending machines. This early career path married two of Gary's favorite things, driving and Fritos corn chips. I'm sure Gary must have thought, they pay me to do this? It doesn't get any better than this. When I was 18 and Gary was 19, we decided to join the Air Force. Well, I decided Gary needed more structure in his life and that it would be good for him if he joined. He said, I will if you will. He went in 1 week before me. After 6 years as an X-ray technician, Gary was ready to return to civilian life and move back to Lincoln. He had a few different jobs around town, but all involved driving something somewhere. In 1986, he began at State Farm as a groundskeeper. While yard work was far from one of Gary's passions, driving the riding mower around the grounds was. He loved riding that mower. At State Farm, he worked his way up in the company from groundskeeper to computer programmer and support staff, and was a well-respected member of his team. His best friend and co-worker, Diane, knew him for about 12 years. She shared some of her fond memories of my brother. And here's what she had to say. Things I remember about Gary. His clever wit that was so varied in knowledge. We talked about obscure English rules of language and words. We shared an interest in words. People didn't know that he wrote, and that he was a poet, a writer, and wit. He shared poems with me and some of his writings. I always told him that he should be writing. Every year, we would look at the winners of the Dark and Stormy Night contest. Every year, I would challenge him to enter something because it was so his style. One year, he actually did submit 3 entries. They were good. One was about a Twinkie. We had much fun with the internet as web pages really came into their own with coding and design. As I was taking programming classes for functionality, Gary was into the hard coding of web pages. He could do it like nobody else I knew. He would use the actual code where others would use software to make the experience more friendly. There were nights when there was nothing to do in some of the wee hours of the morning. We did things together that I never saw him do with others. On nights when it was just the two of us, we would work a single online crossword puzzle together. Gary would type and I would hover. We also constructed things. One night it was a circular staircase out of straws and coffee stir sticks because it was a prototype of a cat ladder I was considering. Many nights it was work on a web page he was coding. We were a great team when it came to computer coding. I'm not good at coding, and Gary's the genius when it comes to that sort of thing. I would explain what I wanted something to do, and he would make it happen. Then he would stare at the code together and try to refine it in some way to be more elegant in structure. Gary's work ethic was ideal. He was always there early, and he was always there. Third shift, early first shift, any hour, Gary could always be there. He was one of the smartest people I've known. Few realized how incredibly smart he was. When I first learned of Sudoku, I bought him a book because I knew he'd be good at it. Sure enough, we had the same book, and where I was still working the easy ones with lots of notes in the little squares, Gary was working the hardest ones, in pen, and not by columns or rows. He would study individual blocks of squares, fill one in, and then move to the next. It was a thing of beauty, his Sudokus. For me, some special things I will remember about my brother was his ingenious wit, wonderful sense of humor, and his appreciation for the irony in life. What I will miss most about him is his gentle spirit. I don't believe he was as misanthropic as he pretended to be, but for this I will need to wait to debate at a later time.